Hello, my name is Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer, and today we're going to be doing a code walkthrough of the KMP proof of concept app that I've been working on. The Fred's Roadtrip Storyteller. Easy to say. So what I'm gonna walk through today is the app architecture style overview, like why I made some certain design decisions with this app. Um, uh, you'll notice there's no view models. I'm actually trying to not use view models at all and get away from this ping ponging that we seem to have inherited from Android. I don't know if it's all that useful. I'm going to try and get away with not using it in this app. See what I can do without it. Um, a minimum number of files. So another thing too is I've seen this habit in Android and other projects I've been on, which they break up the project into lots of tiny little files, and each file has a tiny little, like one tiny little function in it. And I do believe this may have been inherited from the clean code stuff, which on enterprise projects may make sense, but in UI projects, it's better to have, I believe, the minimum number of files, and whatever's needed is close inside, actually inside the file as another function, because that's kind of what compose is meant for. Also, minimal use of OOP. I was trying to get away from everything's a class. Classes have methods. You have to make a class to call a method. No, we're just using functions. We're trying to use just functions and files, functions and files. So I do have data classes and other types of object-oriented structures. I do use that in places, but I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to get away from not having to use that stuff and just use regular functions for everything. And Kotlin really lends itself to that. I know a lot of people coming from Java in the Android world, and I've been working on Kotlin now for about 4 years, and it's quite a lot of stuff that's different. It's a lot of stuff that's better, and I would actually prefer it over Java, honestly, at this point. And would dread going back to a Java project. I could do it, but not my thing. I want to keep going with Kotlin because it's just the idioms are amazing, and the prefer use of functions files and Kotlin idioms. That's really it. And also I'm also a fan of wet before dry, so I'm gonna write things at least twice, like without thinking about it. Like I'm just gonna keep going and write everything twice before I don't repeat myself. So I'm gonna I'm gonna make everything. I might repeat myself in a couple places, but in those places it's really context specific. If I keep on doing that, that's when I'll make a function. That's when I'll functionize it. And using the refactoring tools are in the Android Studio are okay. It seems like there's still some quirks with it. Doesn't know that you're using a compose function, and the annotations aren't there right now. So there's some things you have to gotchas with refactoring, and on this multi-platform code, the refactoring does not go to Swift or to the Swift side at all. So any refactors, you have to be careful using these tools with KMP now, because the refactor does not include the iOS Swift shared code. So that's something to keep an eye out. I definitely got gotchas on that one for sure. Minimal use of abstractions, like just get, if they're not absolutely needed for testing, and until I actually need to build a test for it for whatever condition, um, which I'm just going to be doing happy path on the UI stuff. I'm not going to do too much on happy path. I'm going to let that just kind of come out of for right now. I mean, you can go to that. How many nines deep do you want to go? But for me, for this one person type of app, yeah, we're just gonna do the happy path eventually. Right now, we're not doing any testing on UI, on the UI testing. I have the scrapers are all tested, and they have all this stuff because that's the code that really doesn't change very much. But as I'm working through on these projects, I find it to be very distracting and counterproductive to try to build a UI test at the same time. So the TDD stuff is I actually applied that stuff when I built the web scraping component, which is pure networking calls. But the UI stuff, I just have not seen anyone explain how to do TDD properly I haven't seen a demo. I've seen no one do tutorial on how to do a TDD with UI because it's like a whole different thing. With backend, totally makes sense. That's why with the scraper part, I put that in there. But with front end code, no. And also just like getting all the edge cases of everything, I don't know if it's necessary. So I haven't put a lot of the UI testing into this yet, and I will likely do very minimal use of it. But this web scraping stuff, which doesn't change, and we need to have a cover of different cases, that's all tested. So, um, so I'm gonna go ahead and review different parts of the app now. Um, so we have different UI elements. Um, the map, of course, is it's pretty obviously right here. The recently seen list is this list here, just this, and it actually includes this spoken part here. But this list of markers is here. That's called the recently seen list, and it keeps the top 5. And then we have the settings, which is available under here, and has a bunch of different settings, which are saved in our preferences file cross-platform. So it's I don't do anything. I have one API that splits off into um, the 2 different platforms. Oh, so then we have the bottom drawer, which is comes up when you click on one of these items, and that's a bottom drawer element that's built into the bottom drawer sheet composable. And we also have the app drawer, which is this right here, and has how to use the app here, purchase pro version, about this app, all that stuff is inside there. And we have the onboarding, the about box, and the in-app payment, which is so here's the how to use this app. There's the about box, and then the in-app payment is this right here, which allows you to purchase the pro version. And then we have the searchable list of the loaded markers, which shows the loaded markers here, and you can do a search here in that UI. Okay, so then we're gonna go into some thoughts on the how I navigate the code, as well as a code style guide. And the code style guide can be found. Okay, so you want to go into the project, into the raw assets, into the code style, and this I've been updating this from another project, which was a Java based project, but I'm using the similar idioms and similar ideas and similar concepts in this project, especially the naming styles, um, and just some of the just general code style is all in this document here. And this has been heavily influenced from the work of Philip Lackner and Yegor Bugienko. How with the stuff he's compiled together and assembled together, and on his YouTube channel, and his concepts of how to efficiently create code that allows it to be maximally flexibly maintained and changed. So a lot of the concepts he brings up in his YouTube series, I'm using there, so you should know about that. And okay, I'll close this down. And also the code navigation. So one of the things, because I'm using all this flat file structure, I'm making heavy use of these uh, command keys to navigate and collapse code. I'm gonna close this down for a sec here. So I started doing this approach when I was working at a lot of these different large companies, where I would just have to start like at the highest level, like how is this thing structured? I want to see a high level view, and I don't want to try and parse through, because I don't know, I'm just really bad at like where's the bracket start, where's the bracket end, I don't know. But these tools, allow you to navigate the code way easier. And I've structured it to be navigated this way. So here's like, this is the settings.gradle, here's the build.gradle, this is the app here. And I'm gonna keep it small. This is because I'm expecting this to be watched by developers, and I'm assuming you have a big screen. Just put it up on the full screen on the big screen. So I'm not making this text any larger. This is how I work, and this is the best. I'm going to show you the best way how to navigate the code base, how I designed it. So just keep an eye on the lower quadrant of the screen if you want to know what keystrokes I'm using to navigate around the code base and to just explore. Actually, this is how I actually edit the thing. And instead of jumping around to file from file, I will have these opened up and collapsed in different ways, and then having a split here. So I just split it, and I put that over here. And if I want to have a different section of the code, I'll just have a different split view, and we'll look at a different section of it. So that's how I've structured the app. That way, this function right here, calc loading state icon, it is very unlikely that this is going to be used someplace else, especially because it's a private function, right? But it's to the fact that it's a function that's inside this file, very unlikely to be used elsewhere. Now, sometimes it is. If it's a public function, it might be. But if it's private, it's staying inside. Instead of using all these classes where you have to initiate an object and then call it with all the methods, it's basically just has functions that are inside of different files. I keep repeating that because it's like it seems like a foreign concept for OOP. People are really coming from the OOP world, but I'm blending things together that I've learned along the way and my own style as well, and things that have been annoying in the past. There may be a Chesterton's fence for some of this stuff, but at this scale of app, um, yeah, I don't making objects and making abstractions of objects and objects of classes, and that stuff it can be convenient, but can also get like ultra complicated. I'm trying to keep this thing as simple and straightforward as possible. That is one of the goals I have. I'm not trying to match any industry standard or anything like that. That's why I don't really have a name for this style, but it's this compose based architecture. That's really what I'm working on. So, okay, let me get into the compose app here in a second. Okay, so the app, the compose app entry point here. Now the individual like Android and iOS, they'll have a shell that will then enter into this common entry point. Oh, I just wanted to note as well. I'm actually recording this from Mexico. I'm actually in Mexico right now, and you'll hear it's actually Christmas Day, but you're gonna hear fireworks in the background. So that's what's going on out there. Everyone's celebrating Christmas today with fireworks. They celebrate everything with fireworks here. But so here is the app. This is the main entry point. And it takes in a common billing, app metadata, like common speech, a markers repo, and a location service. And these are all objects that are passed in, and it's wrapped in an app theme, which is defines the custom colors. I'm using Material Theme 2. I've got it like set up to go to Material Theme 3, but I want to see how Material Theme 2 worked. And I'm also using the Material Components 2, not part, I guess it's 2, which is the bottom sheet scaffold, which the Material 3 does not have a bottom sheet scaffold. You got to kind of build that yourself, which makes more sense. But I started off with the bottom sheet from Material 2, bottom sheet scaffold. So I'm going to use that. And it's working out pretty good. So here's the app, and it has the main entry points and error message state, billing message state, the installation time setup, the speech, handling the speech patterns. Um, all that stuff is started here. And here is actually the bottom sheet scaffold. Let me see. I hope I didn't step forward here too much. Bottom sheet scaffold composable. This is a material component, and it allows me to set up the bottom sheet content. I don't know why they call it sheet content, but it's bottom sheet content. And that's where it has the settings screen, the markers detail screen, and has a snack bar host for error messages. And there's where all the content is happening, all inside here, inside this the actual the secondary scaffold, which then has a column inside it, which then has the actual map content. I wouldn't skip ahead too much here. Recently seen list. Yeah, so here's the recently seen list. Is right here. And that shows those top 5 markers and all the callbacks for each of them. The settings composable. Let's see, the settings composable is going to be inside here, inside this sheet content settings screen right here. So that's going to open up the settings screen. And the bottom sheet drawer this is the bottom sheet here. So the bottom sheet drawer has the settings screen, but it can also have the marker details screen as well. So here's the actual marker details composable right there. And that inside that one, if we go to the marker details screen, this will also have the pan zoom image. Oh, that's the button. Then here's the pan zoom image dialog, which will handle the pinching and zooming of the photos, so you can zoom in and look at those. And the app drawer is going to be right app drawer. Let's go ahead and collapse this down again. App drawer is in here. Drawer content. So this is the app drawer right here, app drawer content. And that has an onboarding composable, an about box, and web links to send in emails and open web links. So in the app drawer, we have the search marker dialog, calc search entries, app drawer dialog. Let's see, how does it open the... Okay, so it has the about box here, show the about box. And that will actually open up. It'll actually do a callback back here to open up this about box right here, which sets it visible, which is happening in... So it happens right here. It just opens it up. And this has got the dialog with the about box information, including when you want to get a link to the app website. Right there, open URL action, and that is actually another function I created that will on Android will actually, I think it kicks off a flow, which sends which emits a flowable into the main activity, which receives the flow, which collects the flow, which then starts an intent to open up the website. Very complicated roundabout way of doing things on Android, but on Swift, on the Swift side, when it actually launches the Swift code, it's just it's like open URL. That's it. There's no intent thing. It's just a function, and it just opens up the URL. And then we also have sends the debug log, which we collect a debug log, and then we send it here with a send email action, which looks like this. So it expects a function on the other side, which I'll get into in a later video, which on iOS it does one thing and Android does the other thing. And the Android side, man, everything on Android is just way more complicated, and you have to mess with it a lot more. There's a lot more little details that can be missed. iOS just bam, do it, go. iOS devs definitely spoiled first in some ways. In some ways, spoiled. Xcode as an IDE leaves a lot to be desired there. Compared to JetBrains, definitely got spoiled with JetBrains IDE, and for doing Android dev, you definitely need a strong IDE. Okay, so let me see what else. And the in-app payment. So the in-app payments are in the app drawer. So where's the app drawer content. And inside the app drawer content, um, purchase pro version. So I've got a little function here, composable, that goes and opens up this purchase product billing composable, which is basically depending on the billing state, it'll display a different composable. It's pretty simple. Seems to be almost exact the way iOS does it as well, which is really curious, interesting. So depending on the billing state, it'll display a different things you can do, or the user can do, like purchase the pro version. And when that goes off, it actually launches this process purchase product action, which then will runs on iOS, does the Swift billing stuff, which I'll get into when I go to the iOS side, and on the Android side, it's does the and the Google Play Store stuff. So that's what that does. And the searchable list. Let's see, where did I put the searchable list? So that's in the app drawer content. And right here it has a lazy column that when here's a search dialog. So when you click the search button, it actually opens up another dialog, which allows you to type a query, which will go through the loaded markers and find those items that match the query. And when you close that dialog, those will stay. So what I'm talking about here. So when you do a search here, let's say it's for AM. So that will actually stay here. So people can keep the list of markers conveniently right there. So I did that as a little design element. Most users probably won't recognize it, but the ones that do will love it. Of course, I love doing little things like that. Okay, and the piece de resistance, the Google Map. Holy moly! Yeah. Okay. So Google Maps. It's been not that pleasant dealing with Google Maps composable. I really do feel I hope I'm assuming they're working on this problem issue. If they're not, somebody needs to be. Um, but it seems to be set up right now with the composable as is that it's really meant for stills. I think they can design it just for one static thing, because all the examples have a static thing. To make it work in this animated way where things are updating and refreshing and everything's working live, oof. Basically, what Google seems to have done is they put a composable wrapper around the existing Android composed imperative style Android. It's like the hold on, let me get my thoughts together. They seem to be using the old XML based Android component, Google Map component, and just put a wrap around it to get it out the door. So, given that, there's been a lot of things I've had to do to make it actually function somewhat properly. The biggest thing is when you change the markers, you can't do it every time, because if you do it every time, you can't do it every frame. So you have to update the markers and then let it go. Update the markers, then let it run. Update the markers, let it run. And you can't do too many updates because it'll bog down the frame rate. So you have to sometimes. So when the user is scrolling around, I have to do this thing where I reduce the cluster size while they're scrolling on lower performance phones. I have to reduce the cluster size, and you'll see that in the debug. And if you turn the debug on, you'll see the rings grow and shrink and all that stuff. I had to do it that way. There may be another way of doing it that is a more efficient and is easier, but it works on Android. On iPhone, I'm still on the iOS side. I'm still working through it, so I haven't completed that part. Just know that the heat maps, I couldn't get the heat maps on iOS to working, the extended stuff, but on Android it works pretty good. Actually, that part worked out pretty good. But yeah, so I'm going to be going to the deep dive on the Google Map code now. So it's here in the shared source, common main, data, presentation, maps, and that's the main map, and that's the Google map. And then we want to go to, it's the iOS one. We want to go to here. Okay, so here is the Android side of the Google Maps. And let's see here. So one thing I want to explain is this naming mechanism I've used here. There's the should and on did. Should, on did. On, is, should, on did, should, on did. So the way Google Maps on Android under XML work is you basically, it seems to be you have to like set some internal state, and then every frame it'll just run on that internal state. That seems to be how it's set up. So you have to do this like, you can't update every frame because it'll bog down. So you have to update it every once in a while. You have to update it infrequently, otherwise it'll just ruin the performance, and it'll bog down so bad so it won't even update properly. Especially when you get lots of markers, which the clustering algorithm is still. I'm using the Google one. I've had to like mess with it with the clustering algorithm, and you'll see in here how I had to mess with it. But basically, you have to do this 2-stage thing where on compose you have to like during a command where you like have to update the markers, you update them, and then after the markers are updated, it'll signal back to stop up. No more updates. Updates have been achieved. This is how I figured out how to get this to work. I don't know if this is the right way to do it. It is a way. There is no recommendation. I'm just kind of winging it right now. This stuff is still alpha, so this works though. This does work, even though I've had to do some little funky workarounds, and you'll see them down in here. Like the start clustering restrict radius. I had like all this stuff is all this optimization, all these optimization stuff. So let's see, where's the Google map? So here is the Google map. So here's where I set up the heat map overlay, which is I was having some issues with it. So all this stuff is still under construction. I'm still like, and we're in alpha. We're not quite beta yet, but I'm gonna leave a lot of stuff in here as I work on it because it's useful to see which rabbit holes I've gone down. I've got to go down many rabbit holes, many dead ends of like approaches to things. It's like I've gotten used to that because that's the nature of Android. But it seems like a little bit. I mean, it has bled into the compose space, especially on the edge of doing this stuff because no one's done this stuff yet. I'm crazy for even trying, and you're crazy for listening and along. Because this stuff is all open to change and flux and all that stuff. Anyway, so so here is where here's part of this optimization stuff I've had to do to make it render on machines that aren't as performant, and just how Google Maps is working. It works. The polyline, this is for an experiment. I just leave that in there just to show how polylines work. Okay, his last marker is updated. So this is the these show the different concentric rings for like helping me debug these performance issues. Um, and I will go into those details a little bit later. Here's the clustering. So with the clustering on Google Maps, you can either use markers or clusters. And if you go markers, you can't use clusters. And if you go clusters, you can't use markers. Well, you can sort of, and I kind of did that with the info, but this info marker is having a markers and a cluster at the same time because the way they handle the info markers, I'm sorry, there's something messed up. I've got it kind of working, but it just seems to be not set up for this animated viewport tracking thing. It's really not really set up. But you can see how I've worked through the issues and follow along. And of course, I'm willing to answer questions about it as well. So I've got the cluster content and cluster item content. This is the actual marker. And it sets the color here, and I'm using this camel library for the images, which is KMM cross-platform image library. Works pretty good actually. But Google Maps does not like big bitmaps, and I had the craziest time trying to figure out why is this thing so slow. Well, it turned out the composables, they don't scale it they don't do any internal bitmap representation. They're just like, oh, you give us a big fat bitmap, we're gonna try and render it. So I had to like reduce the size of these clusters. I mean, you see, I was still like in the middle of figuring out like what is the cause of this performance issue. A lot of this stuff is like, where's these performance issues coming from, especially with Google Maps. Oh my goodness, like obviously they put that together very quickly. I hope they're working on it. I don't mean to repeat myself, but it needs to be addressed for actual production, yeah, I'm gonna put this app in production, but for future apps, people, I've filed bug reports on all this stuff, so I've already made my voice heard. I don't know if anybody's paying attention though. I don't know if they care. But so to make it really performant, you can go back and use emojis. I was using emojis here for a second. So you can see the performance differences between using emojis and bitmaps here, which is this is what I'm using here for this camel image stuff. Okay, so that's that part. So this info marker, man, I had the hell of a time trying to get this thing to stay up. I'm still trying to figure out what the heck's going on there. But you'll see it. I tried to comment it as best as I could about what is going on here. But there's like strange things like you had to like render the marker twice. Why? I don't understand. It's like obviously issues. But I've tried to work around them and like note where I'm having difficulties and where what I'm doing here is I try to do as best as possible. Yes, this requires it to be remembered twice. I don't know why. Somebody out there maybe can tell me. And then here's more of that tuning the performance. Man, I messed with this for at least 2 weeks. It's as good as I can get it, as far as I can tell. Man, it works. That's about all I can say about it. Okay, so that's a surface level overview. I might go into. I'm gonna do the next video. I'm gonna do is about the web scraping part of it. How I go out to the web and use the KMM, the Kotlin native Kotlin native networking libraries, which are great. Honestly, no retrofit. No retrofit. Screw that. No more of that stuff. That stuff's ridiculous. Annotations are annoying, and you'll see how I set it up. Yeah, everything's all in one. Like one of the things I'm trying to do is keep all the code near each other and in context specific. So the web scraping stuff is odd. It's definitely odd. It's efficient, yes. Odd as well, and I'm gonna go into more detail in the next video. So that's it for now for the code walkthrough. I may do deeper dives depending on feedback I get about what parts you want to hear about. the Google Maps part was the most bitch part of this whole thing. Like it was seriously, dude. Anyway, I figured it out for you guys. Check it out. You can make your own apps, fork it. Give me a like and subscribe. And join me for the next one.